I never imagined that my life would take such a dark turn. Growing up in a small town, I always thought I would live a simple life, get married, and have a family. But things didn't turn out that way. It all started when I was struggling to pay my college tuition. I took up a job as a delivery boy for a local pizza joint, but the pay was barely enough to cover my expenses. That's when I stumbled upon the dark web. I had heard of it before, but I had never ventured into its depths until then. I was fascinated by the anonymity and the sheer amount of illicit activity that took place there. That's when I discovered a new way to make money. Hitman for hire. It was a shady business, but the pay was good, and I was desperate. At first, I hesitated. I had never even held a gun before, let alone kill someone. But the lure of quick cash was too strong to ignore. I started small, taking on low-level hits and gradually working my way up. Soon enough, I was one of the most sought-after hitmen on the dark web. But with each kill, a part of me died too. I became numb to the violence, and the guilt started to eat away at me. I tried to quit, but it was too late. I was in too deep, and the people I worked for weren't the kind who let you walk away. And that brings me to where I am now, a life of bloodshed and regret, with no way out. I am Ethan, and I am a hitman for hire on the dark web. But something tells me that my past is about to catch up with me in ways that I can't even imagine. As time passed, I became more and more skilled at my craft. I started getting larger and more lucrative contracts, working for some of the most dangerous people on the dark web. My identity was always kept a secret, and I never met any of my clients face to face. Everything was done through encrypted messages, and I was paid in cryptocurrency. But the more successful I became, the more isolated and alone I felt. I couldn't talk to anyone about what I did, not even my closest friends or family. I was trapped in my own dark world, with no way out. One day, I received a message from a client who wanted me to take out a high-profile target. It was a job that could change my life forever, but it also came with a catch. The target was a well-known politician who had made a lot of enemies over the years. The client wanted me to make it look like an accident and to leave no trace behind. I hesitated at first. Taking out a politician was a whole different ballgame, but the money was too good to turn down, and I needed it more than ever. So I accepted the job. I spent weeks planning the hit, researching the politician's movements, and figuring out the best way to make it look like an accident. Finally, the day arrived, and I made my move. It was supposed to be a clean kill, but something went wrong. The politician's bodyguards were more heavily armed than I had anticipated, and they caught me off guard. I managed to escape, but not before getting shot in the leg. I knew that the client wouldn't be happy with the outcome, and I was right. He sent me a message, threatening to expose my identity to the authorities unless I returned the payment he had made. I had no choice but to comply. I returned the money and went into hiding, but it was only a matter of time before my past caught up with me. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, never able to relax or trust anyone. One day, I received a message from an unknown sender. The message was simple. "I know who you are, Ethan, and I know what you've done." I tried to trace the message, but it was untraceable. I knew then that my days were numbered. From that moment on, I lived in fear, constantly watching my back and waiting for the inevitable. And then one night, it finally happened. I was ambushed in my own home, taken by surprise by a group of armed men. I tried to fight back, but it was no use. They overpowered me, and I was knocked unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a dark, damp room, chained to a wall. I had no idea where I was, or who had taken me. All I knew was that my past had finally caught up with me, and there was no way out. The horror of what I had done finally hit me, and I realized that I had brought this upon myself. I was Ethan, the hitman for hire on the dark web, and my time was up. As I struggled against the chains that held me, I heard footsteps approaching. A figure emerged from the shadows, and I recognized him immediately. It was the man whose son I had killed on a hit gone wrong. He was the leader of the Triangle, a notorious organization that did the dirty work for the American government.
"You should have known better than to mess with us,"
he sneered, pulling out a knife.
"You killed my son, and now you're going to pay."
I tried to reason with him, but it was no use. The man was filled with rage and grief, and he had no intention of letting me go. He came at me with the knife, and I braced myself for the pain. But instead of stabbing me, he started to carve symbols into my flesh. It was a strange, twisted ritual that I didn't understand. As he worked, he explained to me that the Triangle was more than just an organization. It was a secret society with roots that went back centuries, and its members were the most powerful and influential people in the world. They did whatever it took to maintain their power and control, even if it meant sacrificing innocent lives. "You were just a pawn in our game," the man said. "A disposable tool that we used to get what we wanted, and now that we're done with you, you're going to disappear forever." With that, he injected me with a powerful sedative, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a different place. It was a dimly lit room, filled with strange equipment and symbols that I didn't recognize. I was still chained up, but my wounds had been treated, and I was no longer in pain. I tried to call out, but my voice was hoarse, and no one answered. Days turned into weeks, and I lost all sense of time. I was given food and water, but I never saw my captors. I was left alone with my thoughts and the darkness that consumed me. Finally, one day the door opened and a figure stepped inside. It was the leader of the Triangle, and he had a twisted smile on his face. "We have big plans for you, Ethan," he said, holding up a file. "You see, you're going to become our new Hitman. You're going to do the dirty work for us, just like you did before. Only this time, you won't have a choice." And with that, he left me alone in the darkness to contemplate my fate. I was trapped once again in a never-ending cycle of violence and horror, with no way out. I was Ethan, the hitman for hire on the dark web, and I had become a prisoner of the Triangle,